For those that watched my first video, you know today's video is going to be all about the backstory. How did I get to the point where I decided that I needed to embark on a fitness journey? When I say fitness, again, 3 pillars: physical, mental, spiritual. And so I want to spend this video really from the start of my career, which is when I believe that a lot of these things started to happen for me, and then up until the date that I went to the doctor, which was in July of 2023. And I say the doctor because that was when I found out that I was 375 pounds and had a variety of other medical issues. And so, you know, that really slapped me in the face at that point. And so I wanted to share how that built up until that date, because my hope is that that's relevant and important to somebody that might be going through that. And hopefully you can learn from my experiences. You know, I said last time, the good, bad, and the ugly. Well, you're going to get a lot of the bad and the ugly today, and how that fed into, you know, some of the worst moments of my life to ultimately lead me to make a change. And so I say the start of my career because my mindset with my career, I think, is really what set me on the trajectory that I went on. I always saw myself having success, but to me, success meant more money, more power, more leadership. And to do that, I strove for promotions. I was always striving for more. And the unfortunate part is, you know, the more you get, the more you want, the more you desire. And so it was never enough. But, you know, the one thing I've learned is, you know, sometimes more success just means more stress. And in my case, that's what it meant. And that's fine if somebody's learning and growing and addressing those things as they come and learning how to cope with those stresses. But I wasn't. You know, I would take moments of learning from a stressful moment, and rather than apply those things to future moments or just to my general day-to-day life, I would fix them, feel better, repeat. Fix them, feel better, repeat. And essentially was the definition of insanity. Doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And so, you know, that started that way, where I'd have moments of high stress, high anxiety, high depression, and then it would flip 180 because I'd do a few things, I'd get out of it, and I'd be back to in the gym, eating better, doing better. And, you know, eventually, you know, as other stresses, whether it's, you know, things that I caused for myself, my relationships, whatever it might have been, you know, those started to pile on. And then now, you know, when I'm getting into bigger roles, I'm having constant stresses, and then constant stresses in my personal life. And then all of a sudden, all I'm doing is stressing and worrying, and it's a day in, day out process, hour in, hour out process. And so, you know, the last couple years leading up to that July 2023 date, that's what I was dealing with. I was just always stressed, always worried, not enjoying life. And there were a variety of other, you know, personal things that I don't want to dive into too far in these videos, just for the sake of keeping some privacy of other folks that may have been impacted by those things. So I apologize for not going too transparent for everybody, but hopefully everyone understands why. But, you know, I didn't do a good job of doing the things such as like meditation, getting outside, having fun. I wasn't doing enough of those things constantly. And I only really focused on all of those things when I was in the worst position. And, you know, as I got to that point where everything was piling on, I couldn't keep up with it. And so all of those things that I wanted to try, whether I didn't feel like I had enough time for, enough energy for, it just started to just bog me down constantly. And so everything suffered around me. My health suffered because my coping mechanism was food. So my relief was sweets and things like that, and salty things, fast food. And, you know, when that's your coping mechanism and you're in a constant state of that, well, what happens? You get fatter, you are more unhealthy, You stop going to the gym because your energy levels are terrible and you have nothing that's driving you from a mental or spiritual standpoint because you let that fall off. And, you kind of get yourself to a point where you feel terrible, you look terrible. And, for me, it got to a point where I didn't know what to look forward to anymore. I was like, is this what my life is going to be like for as long as I'm working? For the next 30, 40 years? Like, is that really what life is going to be like? And that sounded terrible. And so, even that didn't make me change, though. It was like, no, I'll figure it out. And, I never did until everything else had to fall apart around me. From needing to change careers to needing to end relationships, despite the fact that the love was still there. It's unfortunate, but, just prior to that July date, I had changed careers to something less stressful. It had helped. I didn't have the work stress, but all the other stresses, from my personal life, kept things pretty constant for me from a stress standpoint, to the point where work was the relief. And that was a weird feeling because I'd never felt that before. It was always the opposite or both combined. And so it was me realizing that, cutting out the work stress wasn't enough. I needed to cut out that relationship. And so, as much as I didn't want to, it was me realizing that if I'm just going to be in a constant state of this stress and I didn't see any end to it, I didn't see a way to fix it, that the reality is that I probably wasn't going to see the age of 50, maybe not even 40, 45 with the way things were going. And so at that point, it was really like, okay, you're going to hit this reset button, and it's going to be a hard reset. It's going to be that unplug the system, let it sit for 30 seconds, plug it back in, reset, where things are not going to be the same anymore. And you're going to go through some shit, and it's going to suck. But at the end of the day, it's for the best, and you're cutting out all the things that were detriments to your life, and you're going to rebuild. And so that's what I did. I essentially started myself from ground zero, and I'll admit from time to time that's still a bit of a struggle to, know that I'm starting over at 29 years old. But at the end of the day, I think for my health, which really is the most important, how am I ever going to be successful or get to the fun things later on in life, much less the fun things now, unless I make those changes. If I didn't make the change, I might not even get to see retirement or anything like that. So, I think to this day, every now and then I ask myself, did I make those right decisions? Did I do the right things by cutting some of those things off? And the answer is always yes, because every time I think about the alternative, I think about my life being shortened. And, that really drove me to say that enough is enough and I need to make a change. And a lot of those changes, everything starts from within. There were things that were causing me stresses that were out of my control, but a lot of it, really was in my control. And, at that point, I took a couple months after all those changes, but July came and was like, okay, you're going to go to the doctor. You're going to learn everything that's wrong with you, and you're going to make a path, make a plan and a path to get to a healthy state. Get to the point where your physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of your life are all in a fantastic place. And like I said, I went to that doctor, 375 pounds. I mean, damn, I might have been more than that, because prior to going to the doctor, I was, probably lost a little, just trying to be a little better than I was. But formally, 375 pounds, all the other medical issues I had mentioned before, and essentially doctors saying, look, you got to make some changes. Like, eventually some of these things that are issues or borderline issues are going to be catastrophic, and you're going to be on medication, you're going to have a short lifespan, and you know, you're not going to be able to look forward to much else. And so, you know, that day was a huge turning point. And, you know, like I said, today's videos really only focus on that backstory to that day, but that really set things in motion. It really lit a fire in me to say, okay, you fucked around enough, and now it's time to make a change. Because, you know, saying you fucked around and you found out, well, I found out the hard way, and I only did it to myself. I didn't have to, but I did. So, you know, I appreciate everyone listening. I hope you took something away from this video in terms of, you know, trying to do more for yourself early on. Don't take for granted, you know, those things that you did to better yourself and get yourself out of holes. Continue to evaluate and improve your life. And anything that helps you get out of those holes, remember to do those things constantly, because don't do what I did. Don't repeat things and expect different results, because it just makes you insane. So, you know, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you got something out of this. And in the next video, you know, we're going to go through from that day to present day. And I'm going to give you some insights into what I did that went well, what I did that had to be tweaked and improved, how I maybe stalled out from time to time, and kind of the good, bad, and the ugly. And, you know, we're going to really dive into those pieces. So appreciate everyone's time, and have a good night.